I hate anime. Welcome to NBA Guides, a series where I'll attempt to teach you how to play champions that require no brain activity to help you get that elo you've always wanted with the mechanics you'll never have. This series will cover champions that have been dubbed by our loving, unbiased, and extremely reasonable community as no skill required, or f***ing brain dead. And where better to find champions that fit this description than the only lane to still actively attempt to use the Grasp of the Undying Keystone, top lane. As it currently stands, League is in one of the strangest dive or hard engage metas it has ever been in. So much so that ADC is now viewed as by far the least influential role, as a 0-3 tank can 1v1 an ADC with as little as a Sunfire cape in most stages of the game. In lieu of this, many players are taking a mage bot lane instead of an actual ADC champion like Jinx or Caitlyn, and since expecting Riot to successfully solve this problem is similar to waiting for Jesus to descend from the heavens and finally remove Rengar from the game. We should instead attempt to switch up our mentality. Instead of thinking along a thought process that says, how can I even play in a meta where the 6 bans we get doesn't even cover half of the broken champions in jungle and mid lane alone? We should instead change our way of thinking into something more opportunistic. Like, how can I use this dumpster fire of a metagame to my advantage and climb that sweet ladder to a world of win trading and drunken inting?
I died 9 times, dude. I'm actually trolling.
Okay, that time I was looking at Spotify.
Dude, can you stop inting? I'm trying to enjoy the stream here. Might be.
I need to stop badly. Yes, desperate.
Drunken inting. In this episode, I'll be teaching you how to play a perfect champion for this opportunistic mindset. A tree with so much overall utility that these changes hardly affect him, and gameplay that reputable sources have called okay for a tank and akin to solitaire. The Twisted Treant, Maokai. Now, as a bit of a preface before I delve into the exciting world of Maokai's top lane matchups, I'm going to give you a bit of an explanation as to where top laners specifically stand in the 7.1 patch, and what kind of runes you should be taking on Maokai. We currently stand in one of those fun game states, where you can play practically anything top as long as it falls into one of 2 categories. Can I snowball uncontrollably? And do I utilize cock? Or in some fun cases, both. Despite the wide array of options available for the usually very strict tank or split push meta, certain champions rise to the top rather clearly in terms of solo queue win rates. These being tanks, and unless you're what most would call a filthy one-trick, or even worse, a Jace player, it would be pretty advised to play one of these, as your damage will most likely be picked in a different role, like jungle, mid, or bot, or even support. And with so much damage elsewhere on the map, attempting to bring more of it top lane instead of CC and utility will often leave your team comp rather lacking in the specialized hell known as solo rank, leading to a potential loss and many KYSs. Now in terms of runes, we're going to mix things up a bit from your average tank page, and instead utilize a little known fact among the League player base to our advantage. Now, unless you're the same type of homeboy as me, and find watching League of Legends math videos on YouTube a fun pastime, you are probably unaware that Maokai actually has one of the highest scaling attack speeds and base attack damage on any champion in League. We're going to utilize this extremely questionable stat distribution by taking attack speed marks in our rune page, followed by the basic armor seals and magic resist glyphs for early trading, and topping it off with AP quints to help further increase Maokai's wave clear and trading power. In terms of masteries, we'll be going with the basic tank page, making sure we have both natural talent and battle trance for some free stats, and obviously picking up runic armor and Courage of the Colossus in the resolve tree because we actually plan on winning some games. When presented the question, do you want good news or bad news, I personally, as an inherent pessimist and generally fun guy to be around, respond bad news, as well as not being one to care too deeply about how other people respond to that question. Let me drop a metaphorical Mercury hammer on your day. Gaming's most inefficient task force, the Riot Balance team, has decided that a certain form-swapping bruiser won't be receiving a nerf this patch. If those of you in the Bronze and Silver Horde haven't figured out who I'm referring to yet, it's Jace. To sum up this questionable development in a few sentences, Jace had one bad matchup last patch, being Poppy, who as of now has had her laning phase nerf, leaving our unduelable friend at the top of the food chain for around another month. Luckily, playing as a tree with wave clear, easy CC, and free damage reduction, we aren't exactly that easy to feed on. The Maokai into Jace matchup can pretty much be summed up by 2 gameplay strategies, farming under tower and pinging for help, since Maokai alone often won't be able to kill Jace unless the Jace player falls into the category of making "but Graves can't have a cigar" jokes. Jace. 99% of the time, it would not be advised to attempt to fight the Jace in lane. Since Jace beats pretty well all top laners in both short and extended trades, the smart thing to do would actually be denying Jace's strong laning phase. Doing this is a lot simpler than it sounds, as the key to this strategy is just to never fight Jace outside of a gank top. Since Maokai can scale alongside Jace into both mid and late game, the key here is to keep Jace from fighting you, but also from roaming. To do this, you will be rushing a Sunfire cape, as it is key to clearing waves as fast as possible in the early game. You will see this Sunfire rush in most matchups, as it is core to transitioning into the mid game as a CC based threat. Your build after Sunfire will depend on what the enemy team has damage wise post laning phase. AP threat, pick up a Spirit Visage next. AD or auto attack based threat, grab a Frozen Heart. Ideally, you will be able to finish the Sunfire, Frozen Heart, Spirit Visage core by the beginning of late game. With these items, Jace will no longer be too much of a kill threat to you unless your genius brain decides to attempt an extended 1v1 with the balance anomaly himself post 30 minutes. Here's where Maokai begins to have the option of quote unquote outplaying his opponent. Juggernauts like Darius have an arguably more exploitable gameplay style in comparison to Jace. In this lane, it is heavily advised to ping for ganks, as Juggernauts often do not have any escape tools, and Maokai can lock down his opponent easily in a single, incredibly in-depth point-and-click spell. I'm not going to beat around the bush here. The simple key to beating Darius is avoiding the Axe Blade and heal on his Q, along with just choosing your trades wisely. When playing against a Darius, try to find out how large of a brain hemorrhage he has during laning. Is he practically dying at his keyboard? Ask your jungler to spam gank you and set him far behind enough that he'll tilt off the face of the planet. Has he actually mastered the King of Forgiving Kits and isn't leaving any openings for you to abuse? Much like Jace, attempt to deny his strong laning phase by eventually outscaling him in terms of your lockdown by late game. Main point being, the key to the Juggernaut lane is assessing your opponent's skill and acting based off the amount of activity present in your opponent's head. You will be utilizing the standard Sunfire build path here. As most are unaware of, Riot's definition of Slayer is a mix between the Assassin and Fighter class, and Maokai has very mixed feelings on these champions. On one hand, Maokai, much like Poppy, has a rather easy lane against the Slayer Yasuo, as his base damages alone are often enough to outtrade Yasuo, if not outright kill him, in most stages of laning phase, before Yasuo completes 2 core items. Now here's where our favorite treant's Tree Smile turns into a Tree Frown. A decent Fiora and Riven can play around Maokai's laning relatively easily as long as they have decent knowledge of their champion. Disclaimer, if you play in Gold 2 or below, this will most likely not be an issue, as mechanics and actual knowledge aren't exactly commonplace below Platinum. Now don't get me wrong, this doesn't mean that Maokai can't easily solo kill a Fiora or Riven if played correctly. They are inherently squishy champions, and Maokai's high base damages and a few easy combos can easily roll over their health. Remember, just like America learned in their failed campaign in Vietnam, simpler can oftentimes mean better. So in terms of Slayers, make sure you outplay them before they outplay you. If you set them behind early, it will seem as if the enemy team didn't even have a top laner in their late game teamfights. In the interest of saving some time, treat Pantheon as you would Jace. You will not win this 1v1, wait for ganks, and pray to your pagan god for help in this god-awful, soul-crushing lane. Quinnar and Graves, on the other hand, present solo kill potential for Maokai, but if played poorly, the kiting both these champions possess will often leave you dead after a failed trade, or at least wishing you were dead. If you don't manage to solo kill one of these champions by the time they build their Spectre's Cowl or Hexdrinker respectively, you will most likely not be able to after, unless they mess up horribly by doing something intelligent, like diving a champion with percentage damage reduction and 3 separate forms of crowd control, or underestimating your ungodly high max HP scaling on your W. In this matchup, it would be recommended to start a Doran's Shield as opposed to Doran's Rings, giving you that fun flat damage reduction and HP regen that everyone loves to deal with. Then, building into the usual Sunfire Cape, Spirit Visage, Frozen Heart, and whatever other tank items you decide you need later. Contrary to what most would believe, a self-loathing tree actually will come out on top when pitted against a Hammer Smurf, a Buff Ninja, a Mountain, and a Diving Suit. Maokai's kit allows him to deal with pretty well all tanks in top lane by level 6. This is thanks to his Q being a fast knockup and his W allowing him to go invulnerable for a short space of time, allowing him to outplay his opponent. Now, while Maokai is able to solo kill other tanks in top lane given an appropriate amount of time, it would not be advised to post level 7. At this point, attempting to kill another tank will often just leave you overextended and susceptible to ganks. Many players experience this downfall after, for example, managing to kill a Malphite at level 5. Thinking they can do it again, they burn summoner spells and important cooldowns to try and kill him again at level 7 or 8, and find that they just died to a gank after a 30-second long noodle fight with a rock. Against tanks, big surprise, you will be rushing Sunfire, although into magic damage heavy matchups like Malphite and Shen, or if they're rocking something fun like a gank heavy Elise jungle, you may want to pick up a Spectre's Cowl with a Bomb Balmy Cinder just to make sure you're still surviving and winning trades. A good way to understand the relation between bruisers and tanks is to draw a comparison similar to that of a family. Bruisers can be considered the loud, violent cousins of tanks. They trade utility and some survivability for raw damage and kill potential, with the exception of a certain hammer-swinging mess. And what's the smartest way to deal with your violent cousins? That's right, leave them alone until you get help, and choose your interactions with them very wisely. Remember, these bruisers have early kill potential but lack the unkillable CC machine status that Maokai and friends have. So, unless your bruiser opponents happen to overstep or misplay horribly pre-level 8, it would be advised to play defensively, but not like a bitch. By this, I mean don't wait under tower for them to push into you, or in the case of some of the smarter crocodiles and scissor legs out there, freeze your lane and deny you CS until your non-existent gold jungler notices and attempts to help break said freeze. Point being, play smart and around your wave into these bruisers, and keep an especially wide eye out for ganks, as most bruisers can easily gap close and CC you from decent range. In terms of build, you will start with the basic Sunfire Rush for trades and wave clear, pathing into either an early Frozen Heart if you find yourself dueling the enemy often and require the CDR and attack speed slow, or a Spirit Visage or Banshees if your mid laner decided to open up a relief camp and feed the enemy Ryze or LeBlanc to the point of one-shotting you. Dealing with mage tops, or as they're more commonly known as, auto-filled mid laners and rumble mains, is unique in the sense that you treat them the exact opposite way you would treat the "you don't get to enjoy League of Legends for 15 minutes" type champions. Mages require time to scale and get items, as in a balanced state, they should have relatively weak early game power with the potential to scale hugely with items. And since Riot blessed us filthy, almost subhuman tank players with annoyingly high base damages early on into the game, we get to abuse these mages to the fullest. In lane, look for any opportunity you can to go for trades. Remember, look out for key cooldowns that mages spend to try and wave clear against you. For example, see a Swain use his Q ability to try and clear the ranged creeps? Punish him by going for a full trade with your W. It can be said that your job in this particular matchup is to be such a nuisance to your opponent that you hit your unkillable power spike before your opponent hits their mass genocide power spike. In these lanes, you will start with a Doran's Ring to help sustain your mana as you go for frequent trades. Try and recall early to get a second Doran's Ring and Ruby Crystal to hit that incredibly fun to deal with 50 AP Maokai. Following this purchase is where we get to flex our decrepit, atrophied, tank playing brains to decide our next purchase. If you are winning the mage lane rather convincingly, you can purchase a Spectre's Cowl and a Balmy Cinder to help you wave clear faster and win further trades with sustained dot damage. If you are against more than one heavy AP threat or on doing the hottest in lane, you may want to pick up an early Spirit Visage for the increased sustain and overall healing. Now that you've learned the tips and tricks needed to play this ungodly easy champion's laning phase rather well, it's time for you to go climb. Whether it be attempting to carry 4 vegetables through your diamond promotion series or trying to hit that gold 5 milestone before your weak, pathetic high school friends. Regardless, I wish you the best of luck, and be sure to come back next time for more valuable information delivered by a pasty, angry white man child. Arrivederci.